Brother Darash. Today we're going to be going over the topic duty to a brother's wife. It is an important aspect of the law. It is still to be kept in this modern day age. And honestly, I feel like it's something that's not considered and something that's commonly overlooked, especially for those who either don't have male children or are taking wives. Because marriage is it's a business. It's a lot more than just, oh, we have this Disney Channel perspective of what love is. I like you right now, you like me right now. Before we think about anything else or consider anything else, let's just go out and get married. You have to consider the duty to a brother's wife. If this woman is not submitting to you, or rather submitting to the Most High, how is she supposed to build up your name while you're alive? And even more so, should you die, how is this woman going to build your name? And that's what duty to a brother's wife covers. We're going to start off in Deuteronomy chapter 25 and start at verse 5.
Deuteronomy chapter 25 and verse 5.
Uh,
If brethren dwell together, and one of them die, and have no child, the wife of the dead shall not marry without unto a stranger.
so if one of them dies, she can't just go marry anybody. It's not just like a get out of jail free card. It's not what it is. Go ahead.
Her husband's brother shall go in unto her, and take her to him to wife, and perform the duty of an husband's brother unto her.
So he said that man, your husband's brother, your brother-in-law, you would then become his wife, and at that point you guys would have a child to continue on his stock. Read on verse 6.
And it shall be that the firstborn which she beareth shall succeed in the name of his brother which is dead, that his name be not put out of Israel.
So that he's not put out of Israel. So like I said, you're continuing on this man's stock. So that's really something to consider. I feel like that's commonly overlooked. And it's not something that you have to consider like, oh, I hope she look good, so, if I ever have to. It's nothing like that. But it's to say, like, how invested is this woman into my marriage? How invested is this woman, first and foremost, to the Most High? If you were to die, is she pleased to dwell? Or if you were to pass, she's going to make sure that your name continues in Israel. That's a big responsibility. A lot of responsibility is put upon a man's shoulders, and everyone looks at the man. But there is a time, and there are plenty of sisters in the scriptures who had to step up with certain duties. Sisters that, Esther, one who was with the king, she had to take on responsibility, and she ended up being able to preserve her nation because of that. You had Ruth, duty to her brother's wife. And actually, we have an example. Give me Genesis chapter 38 and start at verse 8. So like I said, it's something that I feel like a lot of people don't consider is, making that sacrifice in order to keep your husband's name in Israel, in order for his stock to continue on and in order for him to be, for that stock to remain. Go ahead, 38:7?
38 and 7.
38:7.
Genesis chapter 38 and verse 7.
Come on.
And Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord. And the Lord slew him. And Judah said unto Onan, Go in unto thy brother's wife, and marry her, and raise up seed to thy brother.
So was wicked. Obviously, he got put to death. The Most High was like, you know what, I'm done with this dude. He's done. So Judah, knowing the law, he told his brother, brother, go in unto your wife, perform the duty to a brother's wife. Go ahead.
And Onan knew that the seed should not be his. And it came to pass, when he went in unto his brother's wife, that he had spilled it on the ground, lest that he should give seed to his brother.
So a lot of people, I believe in Catholicism, this is the grounds to say that any kind of contraceptive is unlawful. That's not even what this story is talking about. This story is literally saying that this man had to go in unto his brother's wife in order to specifically get her pregnant, in order to continue on that man's lineage in Israel. That's why this was wicked, because he said, well, lest my brother should have a seed. He lived that, and what does that go to? That's hatred. That's why the Most High, go ahead, read on.
Verse 10. And the thing which he did displeased the Lord, wherefore he slew him also.
He killed him too. Because his whole thing was, he didn't want to raise up a seed to be for his brother. And I mean, you have to think about the level of hatred that is. It wasn't like the man was going to come back right then and there. It wasn't like you had to bring up a child in your brother's name. He said, man, I don't even want to do that. And so he refused to bring up that child. That's extreme hatred. So when you really get into the character of a lot of the people that are in the Bible, the character a lot of the men. So many times, and it's true, we get focused on the works, and oftentimes for most people that just looks like street teaching. Look at how Saul. A lot of people credit David to going out before Israel in battle. Saul was doing the same thing. Saul was there when Goliath issued the challenge. He said that Saul was frightened. Saul went out before Israel. Saul was accredited with his thousands and David his 10,000s. So often it's really not about how many works are you putting in. What's your character like? And that's something you have to consider when you're taking a wife in marriage, when you marry a man in marriage, because it's not always, brothers that get caught with wicked women. Good women can get caught with a wicked brother. But that you have to prove, like the scriptures say, prove a friend. But we're going to continue on, verse 11.
Then said Judah to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, remain a widow at thy father's house, till Shelah, my son, be grown. For he said, lest peradventure he die also, as his brethren did. And Tamar went and dwelt in her father's house.
So she went back to her father's house. So Judah, again, he was the upholder of the law. His character, it's a real big thing. It wasn't just, oh, I'm out here, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. His character was righteous in the law. He said, you know what, this has to happen. Once died, he told his brother. Once he died, he told his brother. But he was too young in order to actually be able to take this woman as a wife. He said, okay, well, go be with your father. And once he becomes old enough to take you as a wife, then you'll come and perform that duty for both of these men. Go ahead.
Verse 12. And in the process of time, the daughter of Shua, Judah's wife, died. And Judah was comforted and went up unto his sheep shearers to Timnath, he and his friend Hira the Adulamite. And it was told Tamar, saying, behold, thy father-in-law goeth up to Timnath to shear his sheep. And she put her widow's garment off from her, and covered her with a veil, and wrapped herself, and sat in an open place, which is by the way to Timnath, for she saw that Shelah was grown, and that she was not given unto him to wife.
So she said, man, I was waiting on Shelah. I'm waiting however many years. I mean, he might have been a 15-year-old, wait 5 years until he was 20. He might have been 12. And she waited 8 years until he was 20. However many years she had to wait. But she saw him and was like, okay, well, didn't nobody let me know how old the boy was. Obviously, he's a grown man. I should have been given to him as a wife. And what happened? So she said, okay, I know what my duty is. I need one of them to give me a seed to be of the bloodline of my fallen husband and then his fallen brothers. So she took it upon her own hands to fulfill the law. Go ahead.
And when Judah saw her, he thought her to be an harlot, because she had covered her face. And he turned unto her by the way, and said, go to, I pray thee, let me come in unto thee. For he knew not that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, what wilt thou give me, that thou mayest come in unto me?
So he thought she was a harlot. So he said, basically, how much? How much does it take to be able for you to service me? And she said, okay, well, what are you going to give me? Go ahead.
And he said, I will send thee a kid from the flock. And she said, wilt thou give me a pledge till thou send it?
So he said, okay, I'm going to give you a little lamb. So you can get a lot of things out of that. And she said, okay, well, how do I know that you're not going to get what you want? And then once you've gone and you off, whatever the case may be, you're satisfied. You're not gonna give the lamb that you committed unto me. Go ahead.
And he said, what pledge shall I give thee? And she said, thy signet, and thy bracelet, and thy staff that is in thine hand. And he gave it her, and came in unto her, and she conceived by him.
So she said, give me thy signet, the bracelets, and the staff. So again, she was obviously moving in a great deal of wisdom, because the signet was a specific, it had to do with their family name, and it had to do with like a family symbol in a sense. So let me think of a big family. Give me a big family with a big symbol that everybody, Honda. What was his name? Sorichiro Honda, something like that. You see that Honda H. Imagine there was only one H in the world, one little Honda hood ornament in the world. He like, all right, hold on to this. Everybody knows that's Honda's hood ornament. Next thing you know, she's like, okay, well, let me hold on to this until I get that lamb, and then I can return it unto you once you fulfill the price that you said you would pay me. So, and that's another thing in wisdom, because again, after this point, they ended up accusing her, and she wouldn't have had a way to prove that this was Judah's child if she didn't have that signet. And because you could say, oh, this is anybody's staff or that's anybody's bracelet, but you can't say that that's anybody's family heirloom that only you would have had. Jump up to, actually, go ahead, verse 19.
And she arose and went away and laid by her veil from her, and laid by her veil from her, and put on the garments of her widowhood.
Okay, so she changed back. Go ahead.
And Judah sent the kid by the hand of his friend the Adulamite to receive his pledge from the woman's hand, but he found her not. Then he said, then he asked the men of that place, saying, where is the harlot that was openly by the wayside? And they said, there was no harlot in this place.
So he was looking for her. He sent the kid by his friend the Adulamite to be able to pay her and get his signet, his staff, and his bracelets back, and he couldn't find her. Go ahead.
And he returned to Judah and said, I cannot find her. And also the men of the place said that there was no harlot in this place. And Judah said, let her take it to her, lest we be shamed. Behold, I sent this kid, and thou hast not found her.
So he said, all right, you couldn't find her? Well, we don't really have a way of holding her accountable because I'm not about to go around telling everybody that I slept with a harlot and I'm looking to get my family. Like, that's super embarrassing. He like, all right, well, let's just keep this on the hush. Keep this between me and you. I'm just going to say I lost it or something, and, we'll figure it out as we go. You know how Jakes do. Verse 24, go ahead.
And it came to pass about 3 months after that it was told Judah, saying, Tamar, thy daughter-in-law, hath played the harlot. And also, behold, she is with child by whoredom. And Judah said, bring her forth and let her be burnt.
So his first instinct was burn her. So first and foremost, you believe she was a harlot. You was not calling for yourself to be burnt. You wanted to keep that thing a secret, but that's a separate lesson. But long story short, everybody knew that she had not been given to Shelah, and it was not known that she was given unto Judah. So they believed that she had gotten pregnant just running around, running the streets, whatever the case may be. And they said, okay, well, she's played the harlot. She was specifically supposed to be betrothed to Shelah, and she's pregnant by somebody else. I haven't been to a wedding. So they said she's playing the harlot. He said, all right, bring her forth. We're going to exercise the law. She's supposed to be burnt. Go ahead.
When she was brought forth, she sent to her father-in-law, saying, by the man whose these are, I am with child. And she said, discern, I pray thee, whose are these? The signet and bracelets and staff. And Judah acknowledged them and said, she hath been more righteous than I, because that I gave her not Shelah, my son, and he knew her again no more.
So he didn't lie with her anymore, but he said, damn, you know what? She did even what I didn't do, because I specifically promised her that once my son became grown, I would give this woman to my son to continue on in his fallen brother's legacy, to build up those children. He said, I haven't even done that. So long story short, she ended up becoming pregnant. She had twins, and that duty was fulfilled because she had one son in each of the stocks of the men that had died. But that was the level of devotion that this woman had within her to fulfill this aspect of the law. It's something that, I would hope that a lot of our sisters modern day would do, but oftentimes it's like, man, we don't even truly understand the extent of the law and how truly interwoven you become one family to another when you get married. Your husband don't have no brothers, you got to go to cousins and, fathers or uncles, whatever the case may be, whoever is next in line on the man's side to continue on a stock for your husband. That's why I say that's a really big responsibility, and I feel like that's not exercised. Most people, at least from what I've seen, are not making marriages with the intent of, or with the thought of, should I die, is this woman going to continue on my name and my legacy with respect and admiration? And then should I die without children? Is she going to make this sacrifice? Because it's another sister, another prominent sister. Go to Ruth chapter 1. We're going to read 1 through 5. Another prominent sister that had to make that sacrifice in really assuring that her husband's name was established in Israel. And that's what I'm saying. Like, marriage goes beyond the grave. It's not just, one and done. Okay, cool, I got him or I got her. We got to be together till we die. What happens if that man dies with no child? You still got an obligation from something that might have been 30 years old. Y'all was probably together with no children. And now you still have to fulfill that obligation with assuring that that man's child and his stock remains within Israel. Go ahead, 1 and 1 through 5.
Ruth chapter 1 and verse 1. Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled that there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. And the name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife was Naomi, and the name of his 2 sons was Mahlon and Chilion. Chilion. Or Chilion.
I didn't get you one of them cold ones.
And Chilion, Ephrathites of Bethlehem, Judah. And they came into the country of Moab and continued there. And Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left and her 2 sons. And they took them wives of the women of Moab. The name of one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth. And
I'm sorry. Elimelech had already had 2 sons, so Naomi was not bound to the duty of the brother's wife. You don't have to do it, obviously, if he has a son, but it is to establish that he has an heir, as it was mentioned in Deuteronomy 25. So if the man obviously already has sons to continue on his name and his legacy, then that's perfectly fine. But if he has no sons, like we're going to continue to read, then that's when that law is implemented. Go ahead.
And they dwelled there, about 10 years. And Mahlon and Chilion died also, both of them. And the woman was left of her 2 sons and her husband.
Okay, drop down to verse 11.
Verse 11. And Naomi said, "Turn again, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Are there yet any more sons in my womb, that they may be your husbands?"
So she also understands the law, obviously, and she said, once she had passed, Naomi was going back. Bless you. Naomi, they were all going their separate ways. They were splitting up. They were going back to wherever it was that they were going to be housed. And so Ruth said, she was trying to go with Naomi. She said, "I don't have any more sons. I can't. There's no way for me to be able to perform this duty for you, or there is no one else that you guys could even wait on." Go ahead.
Verse 12. "Turn again, my daughters, go your way, for I am too old to have an husband. If I should say, I have hope, if I should have an husband also tonight, and should also bear sons,
Go ahead.
would ye tarry for them till they were grown? Would ye stay for them? Would you stay for them from having husbands? Nay, my daughters, for it grieveth me much for your sakes that the hand of the Lord is gone out against me."
So she basically said, "There's nothing I could do." She said, even if it would have happened tonight, if I would have magically find this husband, get pregnant, have these kids, she said, "You really gonna wait at least 21 years, counting their actual 9 months, her 9 months of pregnancy." She said, "You guys gonna wait for that long just to have these kids, and are you gonna not have a husband for that long?" She said, there's nothing I could do for you." Jump over to chapter 2. Actually, 2 and 1. Start at 2 and 1.
Ruth chapter 2 and verse 1. And Naomi had a kinsman of her husband's, a mighty man of wealth, of the family of Elimelech, and his name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabitess said unto Naomi, "Let me now go to the field and glean ears of corn after him in whose sight I shall find grace." And she said unto her, "Go, my daughter." And she went and came and gleaned in the field after the reapers. And her hap was to light on a part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was who was of the kindred of Elimelech.
So he ended up having, what was this? Yeah, his cousin, correct?
It was, yeah.
His cousin. So again, that's why I said the next male heir to be able to continue his bloodline. So she ended up finding him and going into his field, and that's how they were introduced to each other. That's how they met. Drop down to verse 10.
Verse 10. Then she fell on her face and bowed herself to the ground, and said unto him, "Why have I found grace in thine eyes, that thou shouldest take knowledge of me, seeing I am a stranger?" And Boaz answered and said unto her, It has fully been showed me all that thou hast done unto my mother-in-law, unto thy mother-in-law, since the death of thine husband, and how thou hast left thy father and thy mother and the land of thy nativity, and art come unto a people which thou knewest not heretofore.
Okay, so that's how they ended up meeting. She was in his field. Drop down to verse 20. So she goes, basically, she ends up meeting Boaz. They had a conversation, and she goes and tells Naomi, her mother-in-law, and Naomi's like, oh, yeah, this is actually one of my husband's kinsmen. Go ahead.
Verse 20. And Naomi said unto her daughter-in-law, Blessed be he of the Lord, who hath not left off his kindness to the living and to the dead. And Naomi said unto her, The man is near of kin unto us, one of our next kinsmen.
So, like I said, she ended up finding out that he was also of her husband kinsman, which means that he's going to carry that same seed, that same bloodline, and so he could bring forth that stock that was lacked from the Ruth, her sister, and their two husbands. Jump over to chapter 3. Go to verse 7.
Ruth chapter 3 and verse 7. And when Boaz had eaten and drunk, and his heart was merry, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of corn. And she came softly and uncovered his feet and laid her down.
It's funny because you hear that song, Kick Off Your Shoes and Relax Your Feet. Somebody exposing them feet make you feel relaxed. She knew what she was doing. You know what I'm saying? She waited for him to be full, waited for him to have a good night, took his shoes off for him, got him relaxed. She laid down with him. Verse 9, go ahead.
And he said, Who art thou? And she answered, I am Ruth, thine handmaid. Spread therefore thy skirt over thy handsmaid, for thou art a near kinsman.
So she told him, she said, man, I'm Ruth. Remember, I was in your field. She said, you're a near kinsman for my husband. You know, you obviously know, yeah. You obviously know the situation. So she said, you know, she got him while he was feeling good. Again, there was a lot of wisdom that was exhibited with these women because they knew what they was doing. You waited, she didn't catch him on a bad day. It was like, hey, if you got the time. She waited for him to feel good, had some drink, took his shoes off, waited for him to wake up, and then she explained the situation and said, hey, look, you know, in order to fulfill this duty to my husband and his brother in the stock that was cut off, you know, come in unto thy handmaid. Go ahead. Verse 10. Verse 10.
Verse 10. And he said, Blessed be thou of the Lord, my daughter, for thou hast showed more kindness in the latter end than at the beginning, inasmuch as thou hast followedst not young men, whether poor or rich. And now, my daughter, fear not, I will do to thee all that thou requirest, for all the city of my people doth know that thou art a virtuous woman.
Mm-hmm.
And now
I'm sorry. That's a good point. What's her reputation like? I mean, I know it's not necessarily like we're in ancient Israel where it's, you know, small towns or word of mouth, but people do have reputations. Some people's names are known. Is her name known for good or for evil? He said, everybody knows you're a good woman. What kind of wife are you taking? What kind of man are you marrying? What kind of name do they have? It's Proverbs 22:1. A good name is to be chosen above great riches. I butchered it a little bit, but basically a great name is more important than any amount of money. Because you could be a person with a great name, that's something that can't be taken from you. That's something that can't expire, can't be taken by moth or whatever the case may be. Your name is going to be your legacy. But he said, you know, I know everybody knows that you're a virtuous woman. Read on.
Verse 12. And now it is true that I am thy near kinsman, howbeit there is a kinsman nearer than I.
So he said, yeah, you know, technically I could lie down and I could give you the seed so that you can continue on with that, continue on the name of your husband. However, he said there's actually somebody that's closer related to your husband than I am. Read verse 13, go ahead.
Tarry this night, and it shall be in the morning that if he will perform unto thee the part of a kinsman well, let him do the kinsman part. But if he will not do the part of a kinsman to thee, then will I do the part of a kinsman to thee. As the Lord liveth, lie down until the morning.
So he said, okay, well, first and foremost, he said, we're going to have to look into the other kinsman. But he said, you know what, come morning, we'll figure this out. We'll see if it's going to be me or if it's going to be the near kinsman. Jump down to chapter 4, verse 3.
Ruth chapter 4 and verse 3.
Uh-huh.
And he said unto the kinsman, Naomi, that is come again out of the country of Moab, selleth a parcel of land, which was our brother Elimelech's.
Uh-huh.
And I thought to advertise thee, saying, Buy it before the inhabitants and before the elders of my people. If thou wilt redeem it, redeem it. But if thou wilt redeem it, then tell me, that I may know. For there is none to redeem it beside thee, and I am after thee. And he said, I will redeem it. Then said Boaz, What day thou buyest the field of the hand of Naomi, thou must buy it also of Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of the dead, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance.
Go ahead.
And the kinsman said, I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I mar mine own inheritance. Redeem thou my right to thyself, for I cannot redeem it. Now this was the manner in former time in Israel concerning redeeming and concerning changing, for to confirm all things a man plucked off his shoe and gave it to his neighbor, and this was a testimony in Israel.
Go ahead, read verse
Therefore the kinsman said unto Boaz, Buy it for thee. So he drew off his shoe.
So they handled all the what do you call that, preliminary efforts or whatever the case may be. They went through the custom. They decided who was going to buy the land, and when it was found who was going to buy it, and he actually settled that matter. Drop down to verse 10.
Verse 10. Moreover, Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of Mahlon, have I purchased to be my wife, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance.
So he had his inheritance and he had his wife. He said, okay, now these are the things that he was telling her. Hold on, wait until the morning. Let's figure this out. He said, okay, now we doing this, and she has the inheritance. Go ahead.
That the name of the dead be not cut off from among his brethren, and from the gate of his place. Ye are witness this day. Ye are witnesses this day.
Go ahead, hit me with verse 11.
And all the people that were in the gate and the elders said, We are a witness. And the Lord make the woman that is come into thine house like Rachel and like Leah, which two did build the house of Israel.
Which two did what?
Which two did build the house of Israel.
They built the house of Israel. Was there a place of jealousy? Was there a place for, just nonsense or whatever the case may be? There was no place for that. It said they had to build up. And mind you, great power, great responsibility. They were literally the mothers of the sons of Jacob. That's why I say you have to really consider, like, what kind of woman are you taking, and how devoted are you to this truth? She's struggling with wearing fringes. You might not be able to get her to perform a duty to her brother's wife. You struggling with minuscule aspects of the law, you won't understand something that's spiritual. So that's why you said, man, hopefully they'll be like Rachel and Leah. They built the house of Israel. They were servants unto Jacob. They were earnest wives unto Jacob. They built Jacob's legacy, in whose heirs we are today. So that's why I said it's a very important thing as far as who you choose from, to continue on your name, to share your legacy with, your inheritance with, because that was one of his concerns. It's all of those things. You don't want to give your inheritance over to a wicked stock either. But all of those things are still things that we need to practice to this day. And marriages seem to be a very big thing in Israel, and also a very big hang-up, unfortunately, for Israel oftentimes. But it should really be viewed as there's responsibility that comes with anything and everything that we do in this truth. From the way that you walk, the way that you talk, the way that you present yourself, all of those things are aspects of our testimony in this truth, and our testimony in how forward or how earnest we are in seeking the Most High. Finish up verse 11.
And do thou worthily in Ephrathah, and be famous in Bethlehem.
So basically, Ruth, she ended up raising up that son. She ended up having that child, and she ended up fulfilling that duty to her brother's wife. So that was a very long journey from having a husband, watching that man die, following her mother-in-law back to Israel, not really having a place to stay. It said she had to glean. And the scriptures say that you're not supposed to take all of your crops, so that the widows, the fatherless, and
poor.
I'm sorry,
poor.
and the poor can all have some of the food that is there. So she had to live that life. She didn't come back to a whole bunch of riches. I mean, you really have to look at like the minuscule or the minutia that people commonly overlook when they're reading this story. She didn't come back to wealth. She didn't go to Israel to have a great time. She didn't get to live her best life. She was like, man, I'm gonna be here until I figure something out. But I know I'm better off with Naomi than I am going back to Moab. And I'm better off trying to seek a husband that is of a husband that is of my husband's kinsman, as opposed to going in and being with another man that is not going to be able to raise up a name for my husband. That's true devotion. Think about how long she was out there, how many years it might have taken, and how many years she lived with that fulfillment of the law after that. She was that man's wife. It's not like, all right, thanks for the baby, I'm out. Like, you're that man's wife now. You raise up that stock. So man, that's, like I said, it's something to meditate on. It's something that I hope it resonates within the hearts and the minds of Israel. If you don't have anything to bring out, do you have it? Well, then with that, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna wrap it up and I'm gonna say shalom.